The Road Ahead, the future of responsible gambling in Africa.
Welcome everyone for our panel. We have today with us Aideen Short from Lily White and Weldon Koros from Association of the Gambling Regulators in Africa. I'm Robert Zamit from WH Partners and I'm joining you from Malta. And today we have a very interesting topic with respect to the responsible gambling and where is it leading in the regulated markets in Africa. So I wanted to start off by putting some questions to our two panelists. Considering that we have two only, I think that it's fair that you can jump in whenever you wish to reply to any of the questions that I have prepared. So my first point was that considering responsible gambling is generally seen as one of the cornerstones of regulatory regimes. How are the new regulated markets in Africa approaching the implementation of responsible gambling requirements? Are they imposing minimum requirements, or there is a more liberal approach being undertaken and leaving to the operators the possibility of self-regulation?
Okay, thank you, Robert. First, my name is Weldon Koros. I work with the Association of Gaming Regulators in Africa. It's an association that seeks to bring all regulatory bodies in Africa under one umbrella. The association has two membership. It has the associate members who are limited to organizations that offer responsible gambling. And we have the regulatory members where we bring on board all regulators in Africa for them to basically exchange information and if possible for them to be able to draft Pan-African guidelines that will help the industry to go. So to answer your first question, Robert, yes, what I can say is that as it is at the moment, most internationally based gambling companies or UK-based companies, actually, they come with their tools locally. We don't have homegrown solutions at the moment. So the responsible gambling tools that are currently used in Kenya, most of them are UK-based and they are on the operators' end. Because as I understand in UK, we have self-exclusion tools at the operator level. Then we have self-exclusion tools outside the operators, some of which have been made mandatory by
there's four areas, isn't there? You can self-exclude based on deposits, so you can limit based on deposits, and limit can be for a day all the way up to self-exclusion. You can limit on losses, you can limit on time spent, and you can limit on help me, Robert, what's the last one?
And the other would be even losses, wagers,
losses, time, and deposits, and
mostly those are the main ones being used. Then there is also in certain games, when you look at, for example, repetitive games, the casino style games, where some jurisdictions even impose a reality check, since the games are so repetitive. That would create easily, the player would easily lose time in playing the game. So they would want to have a pop-up to interrupt play to make sure that the player knows how much he has played, how long he has been playing. So these are the general responsible gambling features that we generally see in Europe and in the UK.
Well, I think they're mostly, like the pop-up, for instance, is mostly based on things like the casino gaming, whereas here in Africa it's predominantly sports betting. So I think it's kind of deposits and frequency. Because I mean, Weldon, you'll know more than me about this, but my understanding in Africa is there's a overwhelming majority of active gamblers gamble every day. Now, in any kind of in any European or US jurisdiction, that would be stopped. It wouldn't just be flagged; it would be stopped. sport, it will be stopped and checked, and flags go up for customers who appear to change their behavior. Now, from what I understand, it's quite consistent, but it's very frequent. And, that's without the affordability checks or without the other kind of levels of self-exclusion, that's a massive part of responsible gambling. And I'm just speaking to Africa now. It's not to other kind of jurisdictions, but that's a remarkable part of responsible gambling that simply isn't there.
Yeah, I'll agree with you that that's true. First, there are no affordability tests in Africa. We should forget about that because first, Kenya is a middle-income country. Some countries actually people live with less than $1 a day. So if you are to impose affordability checks and maybe analyze if a consumer can actually afford to gamble, you'll realize that almost 70% of the population cannot actually afford to gamble due to the high level rates of poverty. So affordability checks in Africa, they do not exist at the moment. But what we do have is what operators came with from the UK at the operator level. If you look at UK, we have GamStop, which is outside the regulators, although it has been made mandatory, but it's a system built outside the regulators, right? So we don't have an equivalent of GamStop in Africa.
I think a lot of entities don't, but because I think GamStop, Gamblers Anonymous, and there's quite a few UK based ones that are actually used worldwide. They're used in Asia, they're used in LATAM. It's like there's quite a few, like you're saying, it's like GamStop is used here. It's I think because it's so effective, it's like really, like Arnold was saying, why reinvent the wheel? So they do actually work with others. But I don't know, I can't kind of put together what you're saying, about the knowing that somebody's on $1 a day and probably can't afford to gamble. It's like I can't get my head around that a regulator can sit with that.
If we were to implement affordability checks in Africa, then 30% of the population will have to gamble because people don't have money in Africa. Like the rate of poverty is high. You can't actually compare Africa with European markets. So that is why at the moment the discussion on affordability checks is not ongoing, but at some point it will actually come on board. But for me, I foresee a problem because most people can't actually afford to gamble. And just to also clarify something, in Africa, GamStop doesn't work in Africa. GamCare doesn't offer support in Africa. What we had was gambling therapy, and they stopped, I think, last year. So we are basically in a market that doesn't have any responsible gambling tools apart from what operators have on their end. But outside operators, then things need to start afresh. We need to build systems like from scratch because we are at zero as we speak. But not necessarily at zero because there are tools that actually operators have. So that's my answer to the first question.
So basically what we're saying is that although there is no regulatory requirements in place in these jurisdictions which are licensing and gambling in Africa, we still are seeing that there are some responsible gambling features being imposed by the operators because of how they know that the markets generally work and how to approach actually the players. So they are coming with a lot of experience into a new market and trying to use the tools which they already have. However, it's not necessarily the case that these are sufficient or adequate for the market because, as you're saying, for example, the affordability checks would not be adequate for the markets.
Yeah, that's true. Also, to add something, Robert, the responsible gambling tools on the operator side are mostly enforced by international directors, where when they come into the market, they are themselves who actually try to implement these tools. But when you look at the local directors, they actually lack a basic understanding of responsible gambling tools. So what we have is being pushed by international directors, because how gambling companies operate in Kenya, it's basically a partnership between local directors and some international investors. So in most cases, you find that it's the international director who is actually pushing for the responsible gambling tools, but the local directors, not that they don't actually want the tools, they don't understand the importance of the tools. So that is the situation at the moment.
And where do the customers themselves lie? Because I mean, there's a in adverts in all over Europe, and especially like you were saying in the UK, every advert must contain a warning. Like every advert, and now it must contain "Do not gamble," gamble responsibly. And they had something called "If you think you should stop, stop," with a big red stop sign. And then people are actually promoting their websites based on "you can responsibly gamble." So their sales pitch is "you can stop gambling if you want, but do it on our site." So that's that. I think we're a bit away of that. What do consumers think? Because the consumers, through the massive responsible gambling pushes orchestrated by the regulators, are now very much aware of what they can and can't do to protect themselves. Are consumers aware of that here?
Yeah, in Kenya there is a requirement when you do an advert, a certain percentage must contain an RG message, but then that message doesn't signpost any tool, because I think it will have made sense if you can signpost a toll-free line or a web chat platform for addiction support. But when you just say "play responsibly," that is the end of it. So there is a requirement by the regulator who have been supportive on that end. But then the problem that we see is that there's a need to craft the message that you're supposed to pass across. Even if they craft the message, there are no services, there are no tools, external tools. There is no national gambling helpline. I think the only country that has a national gambling helpline is Uganda and South Africa that I know of. But most African countries actually don't have a national gambling helpline. There are no web chat support system. Consumers are at the mercy of international investors actually, who, if they were to pull out, then it will be a disaster, because the local directors aren't keen on implementing those initiatives. Thank you.
So what we're saying as well is that there is a situation where there is a cultural difference, which is of course affecting the operators coming into these markets to understand how to approach these jurisdictions from this responsible gambling perspective. Because it's, as we're saying, it's not a matter of just having what you have and just utilizing what you have, because the culture and the player base might not be responsive to these kind of features or tools, because there is no idea or consideration of gambling and addiction in itself. Can this be maybe a topic that the regulators should come together to provide a basic approach for all operators in the continent?
Okay, thank you. Currently, at the moment, we are engaging all operators to enable us build a Pan-African web chat support system. So we are engaging one of the UK-based, the largest UK-based treatment provider, so that they can offer training to the local staff for them to be able to offer support. They'll also build a Pan-African web chat support for Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Nigeria at the moment. So that will change the dimension of things as it is. So regulators are willing to engage in that discussion, and there is an ongoing discussion on having that implemented in Africa. The only limitation is that you can only build a web chat support for if you have a web chat support in Kenya, you can offer support in Uganda, Tanzania, and South Africa and Nigeria, since they are predominantly English-speaking countries. but then you can't have a helpline because it will need you to set helpline on each and every jurisdiction in Africa. So we thought that the best way to build a Pan-African web chat support, a Pan-African support system, is through web chat, but not the toll-free helpline. So Robert, that is currently ongoing as the association. I think one of the things we would like to achieve by 2024 is to have a one unified support system for the English-speaking nation in Africa, which will really be beneficial.
But now there are, if you're talking about online ones, aren't there now, like I say Bolt, I use Bolt, I don't know if Uber has the same, but I use Bolt, and you can actually speak in your native language and it translates. So you can have a conversation where I'm speaking English and somebody else is speaking, in where's Uber from, or Bolt from Lithuania or something. So each of us are speaking in our own language. Maybe like that technology exists. It'd be very useful here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, in fact, that is where we are going, the web chat systems.
Yeah.
That is what we are focusing on, because the advantage of that is that at the end of the year, you can be able to generate insights and reports of gambling prevalence in different countries. If you are an operator who is operating in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, maybe South Africa and Nigeria, you can be able to have one support channel for all your brands. And at the end of the year, they send you reports on insights on the rate of gambling addiction in different countries, as opposed to building a disjointed system where Kenya has its own, Tanzania has its own, Uganda has its own. It's possible to build one platform for the whole of the African continent. The only limitation is that we have French-speaking countries that might create an issue, but then it's possible to achieve, I can say 80% to 70%.
That's a very interesting initiative. But I think that this should be coupled as well with other similar initiatives by the regulators in order to have an understanding of what, in line with the culture of the respective countries, what would be considered as the necessary baseline for having responsible gambling features in place. As we said, it's good to rely on experience and looking at what operators bring from the international businesses. However, at the end of the day, unless it meets with the cultural position of the target market, this will never be successfully used. I don't know if you have any other comments from your end.
Robert, I want to actually point out something what you have said. It's possible to copy-paste the UK model in Kenya because we copy the British model a lot. And one good thing with UK is that it's evidence-based. And if you are to transplant that into Africa, we can be able to readjust that based on the evaluation reports that were done. So we can we can adjust that to fit the local space. But in an environment where we have nothing, I think copy-pasting is much more beneficial rather than not having anything. So I think it can be copy-pasted and it can become homegrown after some time. There is another problem also with building homegrown solutions. One lesson we learned is that if you build an homegrown solution, there are brands that don't want to be associated with. For example, if we bring gum care into Africa, an operator will gladly be willing to work with the gum care brand. But if we build our own localized brand and we call it whichever fancy name we want, it will take us the next 5 or 10 years to be able to associate that with operators. So we think transplanting from the UK works best if we are working with speed and also to achieve the best results. And I think transplanting is possible in Africa since it can be remodeled after quite a while. Thank you.
What you're saying there is again, it's so Kenya focused. It's like, and one of the things we're just doing is, we want to look at today is, look, it's what I was saying earlier. So I'm trying to coherently put sentences together. but they're all different. Every jurisdiction is different, and every country is different. And you even take regions like, you know, East versus Central versus West Africa, putting South Africa in its own kind of, you know, box. It's like they're all different, aren't they? In terms of economies, in terms of consumer behavior and stuff. So, you know, does copy and paste work kind of universally?
Copy pasting works in a market that has nothing. You know, we are trying to choose between having something that can be 30% effective or zero. So for me, I think copy pasting will help. Even if it helps 5%, then I think it's good for us to have something rather than nothing.
Yeah, you're right. And it's like you said, it's a base to start. Yeah, it's like it's a base to start, and, you know, to be homegrown and localized when necessary. You're dead right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel, as they say, but building on the experiences of other jurisdictions, but always keeping in mind how to make it localized and effective on the long run. But starting from somewhere is very important, as Weldon is saying.
Robert, you can't see the clock here, but we've run out of time. And as you can't see the audience, it's like, let me, if you don't mind, I'll pretend I'm Robert. Any questions? There's one at the back there. So, Robert, I'm pretending I'm you right now.
Thank you.
Hi, Simon from Total Mobile. Please bear in mind that not just the protections can be provided by the operator, we can also provide the operators in the mobile money integration layer that's linking the operators to the actual MNOs.
But do you though? It's like, all right, well, first of all, it's like, do you or can you? It's like with regards to sharing the information, because, you know, like I mentioned Uganda earlier, where you have the, you know, the age of 26 is the gambling age. It's not 18, it's 26, but it can't really be enforced because the information lies with the telco and the mobile money, and it doesn't get to the operator. So I mean, is you know, does it happen?
We do provide protection on the disbursement velocity for some of our merchants. That helps them protection in the event of a fraud, to limit the amount that's taken out of a pay bill by a particular individual MISDN within a payment period, normally a day. So we can limit it. We can limit it by velocity. We can also limit it by amount. We can apply that same technology, it's the same engine, to collections, and therefore limit the number of disbursements, or limit the value, the velocity, and also the value on the collections in terms of getting the money from the mobile network operator into the operator. If the MNO also wants to give us information on date of birth and other KYC information, we'll happily augment the payment information that we're pushing up on collection up into the operator to facilitate and augment any KYC data that they've collected to then you know, augment their solutions in terms of responsible gaming and again 18 plus. We've certainly put on custom USSD menus, we've certainly put date of birth protection in on registration side. You know, Ghana, for instance, I think has mandated that any registration has to come with a date of birth protection in there, which we put into it, even on something as straightforward as a text-based USSD menu. We managed to get it in there, but again, that's,
you know, for me this is really interesting, because then that leads to another question is, right, you just said there you've got the mobile network operator, you've got the Momo company, and you've got the gaming operator, and between them collectively you're saying the KYC goes collectively, but then you've got data protection issues and all sorts. It's like, again, it's, you know, there's no simple solution, but it's like, I believe there has to be a collaboration within legal boundaries, but, you know, within reasonable boundaries that protects the customer. But yeah, I think working together is critical.
Also, to add something on your end, I think you have a very good point. Actually, the mobile money, I can say, companies can play a very big role. The problem that we have is, do the local directors, they understand the issues? Because that's the main issue that we are actually facing. Some of the local people don't understand the magnitude of the problem that we are facing. Some of the largest mobile money operators in Kenya, they aren't even in this conference, basically because they have a basic understanding of gambling. They need education like from scratch for them to be able to appreciate some of those tools. Like we have proposed to them almost 1 million times, and I'm not sure if they don't know or they actually don't care, but one of the main problems in Africa is personal irresponsibility, carelessness, and maybe because some countries are third world countries, like some systems have totally collapsed. Like people gave up on those systems, so people actually don't actually care. Okay, I know we are in a good hotel, and I really wish you spend some few times to walk around, and you'll really understand what we are trying to say. Gambling in Africa is causing like disaster. It's actually a disaster. People can't afford even food, like the basics that we are talking about. But anyway, that's a discussion of another day, and hopefully with the time, stakeholders will be able to appreciate the responsible gambling discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, because when you put in responsible gambling, it is a short-term hit for a long-term effect. That's the way I feel. I think we've run out of time. Thank you. So again, I'm speaking on behalf of of Robert, who can't see. Robert, I'm waving at you on the screen. So that was awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.